Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. This is episode number 33. We're talking about last night's victory against DC United, a magical ending to the game, one that kept me up and excited for hours after the final whistle. We'll get all into it. We'll talk about some injury news because there is some breaking news. And we'll get into that. But before all of that, as always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How you feeling today, man?
This conversation would be very different if we didn't have that last-minute screamer for Campana. So I'm feeling on top of the world. Great way to end the weekend, I think. And yeah, 3 points coming home. It wasn't an easy victory by any means, but we made a bit of a meal out of it. But yeah, all 3 points in the bag, onwards and upwards.
How are you feeling generally about this team? Because we were as high as we've ever been, at least this season. And then we went around 200 minutes without scoring a goal. And this was a team that was on a record-breaking goal-scoring pace. Here we are into extra time, 0-0 again for the second straight game. Not that exciting, not that fun, not what everyone paid to see. And we do pull out the victory, and that was awesome, exhilarating, all of those great adjectives. And yet, still, it was a Campana banger, not beautiful soccer. Are we just good vibes though? Like we get a draw against the rivals, and then we're back to winning ways, and it's all good.
Listen, we are spoiled as Inter Miami fans. We're used to our team absolutely putting on a show week in, week out, but that's not how football works, right? For any other team, this would be a fantastic way to cap off the weekend. This would be a fantastic victory against a good DC United side. They were actually really well structured and well set up tactically, and the players played really well. And on any other day, I would have taken a draw because sometimes you have these games, but champion teams find a way to win, and sometimes you have to grind it out. Sometimes it's not pretty. Midweek Orlando, it was a little bit more frustrating because of the nature of the way we played. It was boring. I thought this game was physical, intense, not the best conditions to play in, and very important to win these games because you're not always going to get that pretty football, and you need to find a way to win. So for me, we're really spoiled as fans, and sometimes we just got to take it on the chin. We're not going to have the best of the games all the time, but the fact that we're still winning is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, we're not going to look back on this game and think we escaped or we got a result from a bad performance. There was a lot of positives in this game, and I think that's in contrast to what we saw on Wednesday. It was a better performance, and even though we didn't create a million chances, it was still a game where we did a lot of good things, and we will talk about all of them. But before we do, I have a question for you, Saur. Are you a bad news first guy or a good news first kind of guy?
Let's get the bad news out of the way, man. I know what you're alluding to, so let's get it out of the way, and then we can talk about the vibes afterwards.
Okay, so this is breaking of the last 45 minutes or so. Nicolas Freire, who left the game last night in the 66th minute with an injury. He posted this on Instagram, less than an hour ago. This is translated from Spanish, but ever since I left my home, what I achieved was based on a lot of sacrifice, effort, and dedication. Today, I have to face perhaps one of the toughest moments for any footballer. One more battle to face as I did all my life, and thanks to the guys who are tremendous. This sounds like an ominous sign that his injury last night is potentially significant.
I didn't think it would be this bad when I first saw it. I thought he got a knock on his knee and maybe he was trying to be a little bit conservative and take some time off and, walk it off. But yeah, this sounds really bad, man. This could be a season-ending injury, which means it may actually end his time with Inter Miami. I'm surprised, but what a worst possible time for this to happen. Right when our defense was actually playing really well, we were finally outshining in the defense area compared to our offense in the last couple of games. And Nicolas Freire was pivotal to that. So to have him out, obviously we don't know how the backup's going to look with Christoph coming in. And I think this is going to be a major, major loss until the summer when we can potentially find someone to replace his quality. And he had a brilliant game. He had a brilliant 60 minutes.
Yeah, he did. I don't want to speculate too much about what the extent of this injury is. Again, all we know is that Tata said it might look serious in the post game last night, and then we get this Instagram post from Nico. But definitely he's not going to be available next weekend or probably for the foreseeable future. You would think Christoph would step in with Aviles. Those two played a decent amount last season. They've played a couple games together this season. And Christoph is a professional, is not a guy that you are, scrambling the bucket for. We've played a lot of teams that have started a lot worse than Christoph this season. But Nico Freire and Aviles were coming together as like a real defense. And it was the first time we've seen a defense that was like genuinely stout in a long time for Inter Miami. And so it just sucks because we were just getting into this fun part. And if you're a fan of defense, and I like some of the more technical aspects of defense in this sport, it was just getting good. And now we have to break up the pair that was making it so good.
Not just the pair, the back line. I think all four of them, even Jordi Alba slotting back in, I thought they had a fantastic game back there against a front line with Christian Benteke, who's notorious for making it difficult for the defense to, play out. So it couldn't have come at a worse time. I was really, really enjoying this game, and then enjoying the defense and the way we've been playing in defense. And it just comes at a really gut-wrenching time.
Yeah. Perhaps a good segue is to look at that first comment, which is from Ian Frey, who has dealt with significant injuries virtually every year of his professional career and is on the verge of coming back. Inter Miami 2 is going to play a game here in about 2 hours. They were scheduled to play earlier today, but I guess the weather delayed it until this evening. I'm very interested to see if Ian Frey plays for the B team today, just to get his feet wet, just to get some minutes in his legs, and just to get started. I'm probably going to check out that game because I want to know if he can be a solution, maybe not on Saturday, but in the upcoming weeks, because everything I saw from Ian Frey last year was phenomenal, and I just raved about him all offseason. And so if we can get him back and healthy and, for a serious amount of time, this does provide an opportunity for him, at least until the summer transfer window opens, which is, another 7 or 8 games away, perhaps more.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether Ian Frey would be fit enough to play in the next couple of games to fit in directly, but he's definitely on his way back. And I think till then, we're probably going to see a lot more of Christoph and Ryan Saylor. Not fun times, man. It just felt like this team was finally coming together really well. And this injury happens, and sounds like we might get Redondo back, but it's like 1 in, 1 out. And I read a couple of comments here who allude to this, but it's just annoying that we constantly get these injuries at times when we really want to finally kick into the final gear. We'll see. We'll find out how bad this is for Nico Freire, and maybe he can return in October sometime when it actually gets serious, but we'll have to wait for the news.
I actually had an injury anxiety attack earlier in the game when Cello came up holding his, something in his lower body was just bothering him for, 5 or 10 minutes. And I was thinking to myself, they're going to take him out. They're going to put Christoph on, and we're going to be in a 3-5-2. And we're going to be back to that for the foreseeable future. And yet this might be even worse just because of how well Freire is playing and the seriousness of it.
Yeah, that 3-5-2
Awful.
PTSD is real, man. That 3-5-2 PTSD is real. As soon as Cello went down, I had the exact same reaction. I was like, not Cello, man. Regardless of if he plays good or bad, just having that right back is so much better than playing a 3-5-2. I would protect him with everything possible. Pad him up as much as you need to make sure that he's available and fit to play every single game this season.
Yeah, I do wonder how high on the priority list getting another right back is for this team come the summer. Okay, let's talk about the positive news, which is that Freire out, and it's been alluded to in the comments, but Federico Redondo possibly going to play next Saturday against Vancouver in Vancouver at BC Place. Or if not, he's definitely going to play against Atlanta. That's what Tata said last night, either Vancouver or Atlanta. So he's, in my head, he's back and available and ready to go. And it's just a matter if they want to have him make that super long trip over to the west coast of Canada, or if they want to leave him at home for one more game. We're not going to talk too much about that game on this episode, but that is like an 8-hour flight, which is as much as flying overseas from South Florida. So it's a big trip for everyone involved. And it's unfortunate that we have to go do that. But yeah, Redondo back. Positive news, especially for the midfield.
Yeah, positive news, but also I need to see immediately what Tata does in terms of the midfield combination. Who he's going to take out? Is it going to be Gresso? Is it going to be Kremaski? Because that's going to tell me a lot about where players are in the pecking order in that midfield. Redondo is a surefire starter when he's fit. So that third midfield spot is kind of open and available because Gomez is not back. And I want to see who Tata picks in that position. But positive signs in the midfield overall. Great to have Redondo back. And yeah, we'll figure out what the combinations are going to be when he's actually available. I think it's going to be in the Atlanta game. I don't think he's going to be risked against Vancouver. But we'll see. Maybe he gets a few minutes off the bench.
Yeah, that's going to be another midweek game. We have this upcoming week we have off, but then we play Vancouver on Saturday, Atlanta the following Wednesday, and then another weekend game against St. Louis City that weekend. So there will be rotation, and I think we can do a little bit better job with the rotation than we did this past 3-game stretch. I think Tata even alluded to it last night after the game that the guys were a little more tired, and it's something that I don't know if Tata's handled particularly well so far this season, or at least not in this last 3-game stretch. And maybe we get a little bit better rotation in this next set of 3.
Yeah, I could have definitely seen Ruiz starting one of the games in the last 3 and have Gresso take the bench, or even Kremaski, because Kremaski's come back from an injury. We need to make sure we don't run him into the ground. I know Tata doesn't love changing things around, and he likes to keep his starting 11 constant and continuous, but you have to figure out how to play these talents that we have, because the midfield is really stacked and it's not much drop in quality if you make sure you have the right combinations in place. So I agree with you. I think there needs to be a certain conversation about how the rotation is going to be, and hopefully Tata has a plan in mind, because there's a lot of talent on the bench and we don't want to just see them sit on the on the sidelines where players like Gresso and Kremaski get a game in, game out. You don't want to run them into the ground either.
Yeah, and you just look at the depth chart, and you've got Campana, and you've got David Ruiz or Lawson Sunderland, Yannick Bright, now Franco Negri, Noah Allen, Christoph. These are guys that you can start and feel comfortable with in an MLS game, and maybe they're not in your ideal 11, but they're still real professionals. And Chris Henderson did a tremendous job building this depth, and it goes to waste if you don't use it. And so just something to keep in mind moving forward. Anything else that you wanted to talk about before we kind of get into this game and kick this party off?
No, hopefully we get some good news about Gomez as well, because all's been silent on that end. But it's like a balanced universe, isn't it? We've lost Freire, but Redondo's coming back. So
yeah, I do. I think Tata mentioned something, or maybe it was Javier Morales late last week, that Diego Gomez is still a couple weeks away. So I don't expect to see him anytime soon. But let's get into it. This was the starting lineup. We talked about in the pregame. You circled Jordi Alba as your member of the Circle the Lineup game. I thought Sergio Busquets would be the one to watch. It didn't feel like either one was the one to watch based on the things that we suggested. But looking back on it, any top line thoughts for this lineup, or are you still happy with it?
I think the midfield left a little bit to be desired. I wasn't a big fan of the midfield. I thought there could have been a little bit more penetration from the midfield into the final third to try and make those um, runs off the ball. Kremaski does that really well, but Gresso doesn't do that. So for me, maybe that was the only area of concern. And perhaps Suarez could have done a little bit better, making a few runs off the ball as well. But overall, I thought it was a fairly well set up team this game. The plan seemed to be good. We were playing. We're going to talk about the tactics, of course, but we utilized both the central parts of the pitch as well as the wings. Alba and Chelo were getting very high up, more than we would have thought and more than we wanted, as we discussed in the pre-game show. But overall, it felt like the execution was the lacking aspect of it and not the setup of the tactics. So I'm not too fussed about this lineup. I think this would have been the one that I would have gone with. Maybe Robert Taylor to exploit the wings a little bit more, but Matías Rojas has been in such good form. Who do you really take out, right? So, yeah, I was happy with this setup and I was happy with this team when I first saw it.
Yeah, I think looking back, there's no obvious changes to make. We've had the Gressel conversation a million times, but this is the back five you were going to go with. This is the front three you were going to go with. And, we even talked about how with Rojas and Robert Taylor both starting on Wednesday night, we didn't have a real difference maker offensively to come off the bench. And so that hurt us on Wednesday. And we did have that last night, and it didn't make a ton of difference. But yeah, and then the midfield, Kremaski, I thought was probably the right choice over Ruiz, just because Ruiz is prone to fouling players. And so to me, this was the lineup that made sense. And
I will say, though, going forward, there's one issue with this lineup if we see it more often, and that's both our wingers. Messi and Rojas are very similar in their need to cut inside and play inverted and play central. So that sort of leaves a lot of the responsibility on Jordi Alba and Chelo Wigan to exploit the wing side. And I prefer having an out-and-out winger with Robert Taylor in that position, who can potentially keep the width and stretch it out a little bit, because he offers something different compared to Messi. So maybe that's something that we need to keep in mind when we have both Rojas and Messi playing on the wings, because they're both fairly similar in how they want to play, and Rojas doesn't necessarily keep the width on the pitch. So just something that maybe to look out for. I don't think it did affect us a little bit in this game, but yeah, it wasn't entirely bad. It wasn't at fault for anything. So
yeah, I agree, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in this episode. But the only other thing before we get into some of the big moments or interesting moments is that the game did get delayed 25 minutes or so. Nothing too big, and so I don't think it had any effect. Not the last time that's going to happen this season, but first time it happened, and so I think the guys handled it just fine for the first time.
The delay didn't have an effect, but the rain definitely had an effect. Jordi Alba absolutely hated playing in that rain.
Yeah. Jordi Alba, I don't think ever wants to play in the rain again. And Nico Freire looked like he was having the time of his life. He was out there thinking to himself, I've never been more of a warrior than I am in this moment. So I thought he was. I thought
Wigan, Aviles, Freire were having a really good time out there, which is surprising considering they were dealing with Christian Benteke. But yeah, I completely agree with you.
Okay, so again, just like last game, not a lot of goals to talk about. So I just sort of picked out some interesting moments, and you just stop me when there's anything you want to really touch on. In the 8th minute, there was a play where Kremaski really hustled. It was a through ball to Luis Suarez, and Suarez kind of gave up on it, and the defender was just going to see it out for a goal kick. But Kremaski had put in a lot of effort, saved it, got a corner out of it. I thought it was worth mentioning as probably the highlight of Kremaski's night, and emblematic of how I thought he looked in this game, where I thought he looked a little bit more athletic than he has over the last 2 games. Just 2 minutes later, that was that almost ridiculous ball from Sergio Busquets, where the ball comes from like 20 feet in the air, and he just sort of taps it forward, and Luis Suarez is there to make a run past the defense, and he just hit a little too hard. But if that had come off, it would have been a highlight reel goal.
Yeah, for me, I think that was the blueprint. The first couple of chances that you just mentioned, I thought Suarez didn't do enough of that in this game. Or when he did, he was just slightly off pace. And the goal that came in the last minute was exactly like in a similar manner, where you have a penetrative ball to the front with a player making that run in behind the defense. So I was just surprised that we didn't do that enough, especially with Messi in the on the pitch this time around, who's able to find those balls. But I think the rain didn't help. And as much as Jordi Alba hated playing in the rain, I don't think Luis Suarez was a big fan of that either. And he was a little bit off pace today, or yesterday.
Yeah. About 5 minutes later, I clocked it around the 15th or 16th minute. That's when the downpour starts. And it is a classic South Florida rain shower, as hard as it could possibly rain for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then it stops like it never happened. Anyone from South Florida has been through a million of those. And the fact that it was going to end within 20 minutes was the most predictable thing. The 34th minute, I thought Miami had one of their better chances where Alba gets free down that left side. He puts in a cross, and Suarez does have a step, but Alba's cross is a little weak and not far enough ahead, and it gets deflected. Suarez is sort of left wanting a better cross, and that chance goes to waste. And then lastly, in the 43rd minute, there was a lob in for Suarez that kind of just skids over his head, and the defender doesn't play it right and sort of lands at the feet of Benjamin Kramaski, who carries it into the box and then does have a shot, but he didn't feel ultra confident in it. It didn't feel like he ever had a perfect angle, and so he realized at some point he's just got to go for it. The goalkeeper does make the save, and to me, those were like the two big chances of the half.
Yeah, I think the Kramaski chance was one of the best chances that we.
Okay, I think we might have lost Saur. Yeah, so there was those two chances, and that kind of took us into halftime, where it was just the 0-0 game, and we had just had that Orlando City game, and we felt like, where's the offense that we just saw put up 3 goals a game? And it was tough. I don't know if I'm the one whose internet just died. So I'll just keep going. Yeah, let me know in the chat if I'm the one who died or if Saur is the one who died. Oh, I apologize for this. So yeah, going into the half, didn't feel great. This team wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. It was frustrating. We had not a lot of opportunities, not a lot of big moments, not a lot of moments where Inter Miami felt like, even though they were controlling the ball, controlling possession, and didn't feel like they were ever dominating the game. And it didn't feel like they were creating shot after shot, chance after chance. And in fact, I was kind of struck by the lack of real shots that we got off in that first half and even into the second half.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I was rudely interrupted by my Wi-Fi, which decided to give up on me. So what I was saying was, I think the plan was quite well structured. The execution was not great. The plan was to basically play a bit of a hybrid style where we utilize the central areas and then try and spread it out wide, utilize some of our wingers with Jordi Alba, Chelo Wigan getting quite high up. And then we were planning to use both the central areas and the flanks. And it seemed like we were getting in the right areas to be dangerous. But as you mentioned, it just felt like we weren't making the chances, and the execution just wasn't there. So I thought the plan was good, but the execution just wasn't there. As you mentioned, the Jordi Alba chance, he had a good positioning. He was in a good position to pass the ball into Suarez, but it always felt like either someone was one step behind, we weren't getting in the right balls that we should have. Even Messi had some really good dribbling in one tiki-taka. I remember, I think in the 23rd minute, maybe it was, with Freire, Busquets, Messi really playing good tiki-taka to get the ball up the pitch. But then it just sort of fell apart towards the final third. So I don't think we can fault the plan as much. Maybe it was the execution, and the rain never really suits the style of play where you want to play slick, quick football, right? So the ball was getting caught in the wet pitch, so it wasn't great in that sense. But I wasn't too fussed about it. I thought we were going to be able to figure it out in the second half, but I would have done the same thing in terms of the plan.
Yeah, I think I agree with you going into the game. I didn't have any problems with the plan. I think in retrospect, you can sort of see why it might not have worked, and we'll talk about that. And so I think there are lessons to be learned from the fact that it didn't work, but I don't blame anyone for trying it and seeing how it looked. We have this new player, Matías Rojas, and so bringing him into the team, you still have to figure out the best way to make him work. And so, yeah, no problems with that. Going into the second half, Jared Stroud for DC had a tremendous chance off a cross where he tries to hit it off the volley and he doesn't put it on target. That was in the 52nd minute. I think that was their best chance, really a golden opportunity for them. And then just a minute later, Matías Rojas carries the ball to sort of the corner of the 18-yard box and then fires a shot from that left side, puts it wide. And that was it for Tata's willingness to go with this lineup. A few minutes later, he takes out Kramaski. He puts Matías Rojas in that 10 role and then brings on Robert Taylor for that left wing spot. I thought this was the right move at the time. Not sure it really produced the results we wanted. But again, moving forward, 71st minute, Lionel Messi gets clean for a shot on goal. It was a rocket, but I guess not on goal, just a bit high. And that was really the last moment I thought was important in the first 90 minutes of this game. We do have Nico Freire come off in the 66th minute. That was our second substitution window. And then Julian Gressel comes off for David Ruiz in the 82nd minute. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But that was the third and final substitution window. And if it wasn't for a little bit of luck, this game would have ended 0-0. Luck is probably the wrong word because a player did get a concussion and was forced off. But that allowed Inter Miami to use one more substitution window, which is why they brought on Leo Campana in the 93rd minute. And of course, on his first touch, he takes down a beautiful pass from Sergio Busquets. And on his second touch, he fires a rocket that takes Inter Miami back to the top of the table. 3 points for Inter Miami, a golazo for Leo Campana, who must feel amazing now, putting all men to shame after taking his shirt off. And here we are, Inter Miami, top of the table, 3 points. Talk to me about that goal.
Yeah, he made me feel bad about myself when he took that shirt off. But you know what? I don't mind. If he has that sort of power in his leg just by all the gym that he does, I'm all for it, because what an absolute rocket. He smashed that in the top corner. There was no chance that keeper was saving that. Beautifully done. I thought this game was done and dusted, 0-0, second week in a row, but Campana had a different idea. And credit to Busquets, perfectly weighted pass. Suarez was screaming for that square ball. He thought Campana had messed up by going for the shot, but it just, great decision making. He took a chance on himself. And was that his first touch of the ball? Potentially, right?
The first touch was bringing it down, and the second touch was the shot. Yeah,
great first touch, great second touch. Thank you for the 3 points.
He's so good, and I understand why fans that haven't watched every game since he got here in 2022 don't always see that, because he does go through these stretches where he's oftentimes on the bench and he's not having a huge impact. And, Joseph Martinez is getting opportunities because Tata has history with him in Atlanta, or Gonzalo Higuain is getting opportunities because he's your big money DP. And now Luis Suarez because he's Luis Suarez. But this is a really high quality player. He's a guy that if you started him every game in the MLS, he would get, 17, 18, 20 goals. That's what his, goals per 90 indicates, because he's a phenomenal striker for this level. And we saw it today, or last night rather. And it was awesome, man, really.
Yeah. And there's a case to be made that when you're playing 3 games in a week, you should have at least one game where Campana is starting. because he's good enough to start for this team, and he needs a little bit of rhythm. You can't expect him to come on and have 10 minutes and start scoring goals. He needs a little bit of rhythm. He needs to get into the play style, learn how to play with some of the newer players around him. So there's a case to be made that Tata needs to be a little bit more adventurous in the teams that he's picking, because like today's game, you could see Suarez was a little bit off his game. And I wouldn't say he was having a really bad day at the office, but you could see that he wasn't entirely sharp and he was not getting to the ball as quickly as he normally would. And that's, the perfect time when you maybe take a chance in Campana and get him on slightly earlier than the 90th minute. So I'm sure we're going to discuss about why he didn't come on in the earlier and what we thought about it. But bringing him on in the 90th minute for a game where you need a goal is sort of criminal from Tata.
Yeah, I think there's a lot I want to say about how we managed the second half, both positively and negatively. But before we do that, let's just talk about DC United for a few minutes, because their defense, their whole system, the players they had, I mean, everything, night and day difference between when we played them in DC, 8 weeks ago or whenever it was, and last night, because they were also very good defensively. They clogged up the middle. They clogged up that back line, made it very difficult. There was no room for Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez and Matías Rojas to operate centrally, and it just shut down our offense.
Yeah, they were setting up in a 5-4-1 defensively, and then a 5-3-1. Yeah, something like that.
5-3-2. 3-5-2.
Yeah. When they were offensive, but their defensive structure was fantastic. I think they had a really, really good plan in mind. They executed it really well. The weather helped their case, and they clogged up the midfield, which did not allow some of the slick plays that Inter Miami is so used to in trying to cut through the opposition. They made sure that they were keeping eye on the wingers as well, because we didn't have too many options to try and put the ball into the box. When Alba was on the ball, when Cello was on the ball, when we tried to get a ball into the box, there was always someone from the DC United backline covering our target man. Suarez didn't have too many open spaces. So I thought they played a fantastic game, and they potentially deserve something out of this game at the end of the day, if not for Leo Campana. And yeah, they had some, it wasn't like they were playing completely park the bus. Yes, they clogged up the midfield and they were very defensively sound, but it got up the pitch a fair few times and if not for Calendar, they probably would have won this game, because Calendar had a fantastic save towards the end. We talked about the Stroud miss that he had, which I was baffled how that didn't go into the back of the net. So they had a really good game plan and they executed it perfectly.
Yeah, and I do want to give them credit, both to the players and to Troy Lesesne, because we went to their house and we beat them 3-1, and that was without Lionel Messi. And then we came home, and it was raining, and it was a night game, but we really struggled to create offense, and that was because of what they did. I thought Matty Peltola for them came on and had a big impact. He was, I think, the reason that they were able to get a few chances in that second half. He also had a nice shot, but he was really stout in that defensive midfield role, which it doesn't seem like he's played a lot recently. He's been more of a center back for them. So I did want to give them credit for that. Did you see that stat right at the beginning of the game about their expected goals number right before the game started? So right before the game starts, they flash on screen. DC United has scored 20 goals this season heading into last night, and Inter Miami had 35 goals. So a significant difference, right? 15 more goals for Inter Miami, but DC United had a higher XG than Inter Miami, because they fire a lot of shots off and they don't score all of them, but they really rack up the XG. I think it was like 28 XG on 20 goals on 28 XG, and then Inter Miami had like 35 on 26 XG or something like that. And I was immediately like, that we should bring that up because that's something. And we didn't see it in this game. They weren't racking up great opportunities. They weren't racking up great shots, but that's because they were focused on sitting back and making it very difficult for us to operate the way we wanted to on offense. And they did a really good job of that.
Yeah. Christian Benteke was quite silent in this game. I don't think he had a single clear-cut chance, which is all down to our backline and how they defended him. I'm not surprised that they have such a high XG, because they really make the most of their chances and they use their target mans really well. especially with Christian Benteke and his heading ability. So the fact that we were able to get a clean sheet out of this game, I was very surprised. What's it to say about our ability to not actually start playing before we concede a goal? We saw that against Orlando. We saw that today or yesterday. We really need to do something about it. Maybe just start the game at 1-0, man. Just start losing the game.
It's real, right? Because once we go down,
real.
Everyone's like, okay, let's get forward. Let's put numbers in the box. Let's make this happen.
We play so comfortably when the scoreline is 0-0 or the opposition hasn't scored. Like we, pop the ball around really well. We weren't giving the ball away too much either, but we didn't have that sense of urgency that we normally do. So there's something to say about us not being able to play without actually going down, which is really, really interesting. But coming back to DC United, I think they had a really good plan. They played really well. This is how you play against this Inter Miami team. Mm-hmm. But what I will say is that Inter Miami now needs to start. They figured out how to keep the ball and not have teams open on the defensive transition. They've stopped losing the ball in silly places. They're popping the ball around really well, keeping possession really well. I think in the first 10, 15 minutes, we had like 80% possession. Now we need to figure out how to beat teams when they're being defensively stout and being defensively sound, because it felt like there was a lack of penetration and an ability to unlock that defense, which sounds wild considering we have the best player in the world who is capable of unlocking any single defense in the world. So a few questions that need to be answered going forward when we face a similar style. But I'm just glad that we were able to keep a clean sheet against this DC United team and then eventually get that win as well, because I thought this was going to be a draw.
Yeah, let's talk about Christian Benteke, because there was a lot of talk about him as one of the better players in the league. And yes, the highlights are really impressive. And yes, he's got some incredible physical attributes. But sometimes with those types of players, you see them not have impacts on games unless they're really scoring or really getting dangerous opportunities. And I felt that was sort of what happened to Benteke yesterday. Our defense did a phenomenal job on him. They were very physical with him. They got in his way. They were very pesky, and not just the center backs, but Cello as well. He had a couple times, especially in the first half, where he just
I love Cello, man.
Out fussle. He was like a muscle hamster, just out
bodying
Christian Benteke. But yeah, talk to me about how we stop Benteke, and then we can kind of transition to talking about Inter Miami and that defense, because I loved it. It was so impressive.
I think it was the first corner that DC United got in that first half, and I was like, okay, this is going to be the test. We're going to see here what our defense is capable of and how we're going to be able to contain Christian Benteke and these crosses. And I remember Nico Freire was behind Christian Benteke, and as soon as the ball came in, he just pushed him aside and came in front of him and just headed the ball out. And I was like, okay, these players are up for this. They just did not let him breathe, man. They were so well positioned at every single point in the game. Obviously, maybe a couple of areas where we gave away a chance, but that wasn't to Christian Benteke. So they knew exactly where to be. Everyone had a role in that back four. Cello, absolutely fantastic. The fact that he was going forward and yet he was able to recover, because he had Dos Santos and then I think Clich was the one on his side of the pitch that he needed to deal with. And he was going forward quite a lot, more than I would have wanted him to. But I think today he had a really, really good game where he, despite being a little bit higher up the pitch, he was defensively very, very sound. There was a time when DC United was playing on the other side of the pitch. This was in the second half when they were playing on the left side, and they were trying to pop in a ball from the left side, and Cello was right in there between Avilés and Nico Freire, making sure that there's not a single man who's free. And that's how we won. That's how we won this game. That's how we were able to contain them. Our positioning was phenomenal with that back line, because let's be honest, we're not the most physical in terms of our back line. But yeah, we were just on it today or yesterday.
My memory is not the best, but if I do recall correctly, when we played DC at DC, you gave out the In My Pocket award to Sergei Kristov for pocketing Christian Benteke. And I think we did the same exact thing last night. A great comment from AZ. Cello was pocketing Benteke last night. And I think that's really the most accurate way to put it. I think you said it really eloquently. But yeah, it was just when you have defenders that have the effort, energy, and wherewithal and physicality to just say, this is my box, this is my game. Don't even, good luck. And the confidence too, right? There's like a confidence factor about it. And all three of Cello, Freire, and Aviles had it last night, and it was a lot of fun to watch. Very physical, very just like old school, just body blows, and I loved it. And I think it says a lot for, well, assuming Freire wasn't hurt, I think it would say a lot about what we're going to go up against over the next couple of weeks and how we might fare, because there's some serious strikers on the schedule over the next couple of games. Brian White for Vancouver, Yakumakis for Atlanta, and João Klaus for St. Louis City are three real serious high-level strikers in this league. And so to have a performance like this against Benteke makes you feel a lot better about what we could do about those guys. Obviously, no Freire. We'll have to see how they hold up with Christoph next weekend. But yeah, just awesome signs from the defense, and you just have to love the progress they've made. And again, all of this has the dark cloud of Freire's injury hanging over it. But in the moment, it was amazing. I loved it. And it was our best defensive performance, I think, in quite some time. Why couldn't we create more shots?
What we said about our defense, I think DC United had something very similar. They've really clogged up all the spaces. They kept a low to a mid block. They did not allow for any, runners in behind them. And yeah, we struggled to try and carve that defense open. We got it up the field. We got to the final third, and then it just all broke down towards the end. Every time Messi had the ball, there were like three players on him. So it was really hard for him to try and, get that ball out to an outlet. We had Cello and Alba free, but even when they got the ball, as soon as they popped it in, there was nobody in to actually make an effect and get on the end of the balls because Suarez was covered by their defenders. So they really had a very good defensive setup, and it really made it difficult for us to try and play through the lines. I thought the fact that Rojas was coming in kind of added to the woes because he was being an extra body in that midfield that clogged it up further. I thought he should have played a little bit more with Alba, because when Alba's up top, if he provides an outlet to Alba on the side, which I think we saw a couple of times in the second half, if he's available on that left side too, for Alba to pop into instead of going into the box, then Alba can run in and then they can play their 1-2 on that side of the pitch. And we've never seen that on the right side anyway. So I thought that maybe having someone like a Robert Taylor in that second half next to Alba, who can play that 1-2 with him and give him a different option, a different look, made it slightly better, but then it was not perfect either. So yeah, we weren't able to solve that puzzle. It was very clogged up in the midfield. It was very clogged up in the middle of the box. So we just struggled to have any sort of penetrative impact in this game.
Yeah, you make a good point about the clogging of the middle. We've mentioned this quite a bit, but not recently because Inter Miami's been on a goal-scoring tear. But when opposing defenses play very narrow, they can clog up the middle defensively, narrow and tight. And that's where Messi loves to operate. And it's also where Luis Suarez loves to operate. And so you need players that are going to spread that defense out to create space for Lionel Messi and Suarez and et cetera. In this case, Matías Rojas also, as we're finding out. And that's why Robert Taylor is such a good player for this team, because even if he isn't scoring, he's a goal dangerous threat, and he stays wide in a way that forces the defense, especially on that one side, to play a little bit wider. And yes, you don't get that on the other side, and it's okay to be a little asymmetrical because Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez are so good that all they need is a little bit of space. They don't need acres to be creative. I think we lost Saur again, but So to me, that's the reason I like Robert Taylor out there. And I think it made sense to go with that substitution in the 57th minute. Matías Rojas to the 10, Robert Taylor to that left wing spot. And it felt like that was the proper tactic to go with at the time. It's what I would have done as well. So I want to give Tata credit for at least trying something that does make sense. And so you get a little bit more width. You still have your creative playmakers in the game. You don't sacrifice one of them in order to add that width, right? You lose Kramaski, who has his own usefulness, but I think based on what we've seen over the last couple of games, Matías Rojas is the better player to have when you're trying to score a goal. And you keep him on the field, play him centrally where we've seen him have some success, have him where he's had a little bit of creative playmaking, especially in combination with Messi and Suarez. And then you still get that width with Robert Taylor. It didn't work though. And I guess I have what I think is the answer to why it didn't work. But before I do, once we bring on Robert Taylor, Matías Rojas in the midfield, why do you think that didn't solve what we were trying to solve?
I lost connection there, so I'm not sure what point you actually made there. But I thought Matías Rojas looks a lot better when he's in the midfield. I think he combines a little bit better when he's in the midfield, and I'm not sure if he's the out-and-out left winger that we want,
right? So,
especially in games.
So
in these games.
we put him in the midfield, right? We get Robert Taylor. That happens in the 57th minute, sort of early for a Tata Martino substitution. It was a little aggressive for him at least. But why didn't it work?
I'm not sure, actually. I haven't thought about that because I thought Robert Taylor and Jordi Alba combined a little bit they combined much better than Matías Rojas and Jordi Alba were combining. When I think about it, it felt like we were playing through the middle. We were trying to get the ball up the pitch. We had some success in that. We weren't entirely terrible with it, especially with how much lack of space there was in the midfield. We still managed to get the ball up. We spread it out wide. We got it to Jordi Alba because that was the major outlet that we were actually looking for in trying to create that pass. But as soon as it went out to Jordi Alba, I thought there was no option for him in behind. And by that, I mean there was nobody next to him who was trying to create those triangles on that wide side of the pitch. I thought the only option that Jordi Alba had once the ball went out to him was to put the ball in or have a cutback into the middle of the box. If there was an outlet for Jordi Alba that was right next to him with whom he could combine, get a few passes, be a little bit more, tiki-taka on that side of the pitch and maybe move it up, have runners in behind. I thought it was very stagnant once it got to the wide areas. And that for me was the big issue that we were facing. Everyone went central as soon as the ball went to Jordi Alba, expecting that cut in behind. Nobody offered to keep that width next to Jordi Alba. And that for me was the big issue.
That's not what I saw. In my opinion, we didn't have an arrow point to our attack. We had too many players that wanted to play at the edge of the 18-yard box and none that wanted to play at the edge of the 6-yard box. Jordi Alba got down in that wide channel a couple times, but he didn't have a player in the box to whip it across to. I did mention the one time he did in maybe the 33rd minute, something like that, but rarely was there anyone at the 6-yard box in front of the face of the keeper that was there to get a tap in if a pass could be gotten to that player. I did highlight one play in the 73rd minute where Robert Taylor makes a really nice move to get down to the sideline with space, so to the touchline with space. And then he gets there sort of at the edge of the 6-yard box and he realizes there's no one even close that he can play the ball to. And so at that point, his option was to either recycle it back out or to just try and make something out of nothing, which, is impossible for most players. And that's why I thought this game was calling out for Leo Campana, not instead of Suarez, because Suarez. Okay, but to be fair, Campana is a level above Schneider-Borgelin, and he was available off the bench, unlike Borgelin. So it was just you wanted someone that could get on the head of headers. If you had a play that slowed down, throw a cross in there and make them play defense. And instead, you were just cycling it around because Luis Suarez was playing out wide and he was playing far back, and Messi was doing what Messi was doing. Matías Rojas wasn't being penetrative, and we haven't seen him do that really at all since maybe that first game he played against the New England Revolution. And so there was no one on the pitch to be the arrowhead for our attack that you could channel passes to and channel creative energy towards, or creative passes towards. And it was just crazy because there was never anyone in the box, at least deep in the box, that could be on the end of any of these creative plays that we were trying to do. And that's why you get Lionel Messi shooting from 25 yards out, because there's no one there that he can pass to anyways, or combine with anyways, or that could be there for a rebound anyways. And so to me, Campana is exactly that type of player that you want when you have to recycle the ball and then you put a cross in to see if you can get a header, right? You make a nice run towards the baseline, you juke a defender or whatever, you make a nice pass, nice combo play, and you get a little bit of space down the sideline. You want someone there that you can cross the ball into and have be dangerous. And it just was lacking for the entire second half. And so to me, that was the fundamental problem with this offense, was Luis Suarez. And I'm not just blaming him because he can do a lot of great things outside of the 6-yard box area, but we needed someone there that we could have as a focal point when everything else wasn't working. And so to me, Campana had to come in the 70th minute. We'll talk about when we made the subs, but and then I think that paid off when Campana did come in, and it immediately turned into a goal because it was a outlet for our players that are trying to be creative to get someone in a position to actually be goal dangerous.
I'm not sure if I entirely agree with you. I completely agree with your point that there was no focal point, but I thought Luis Suarez was that focal point. The problem was he was always covered because there were so many bodies in the box. At times he wasn't there. At times nobody else was there. So yeah, I completely agree with you that there was nobody to put the ball into the box too. But if you saw in the first few minutes, Luis Suarez was available to make that run in behind. Busquets had a couple of balls in, but it just felt like he wasn't. This would have been the perfect game to play two strikers to try and occupy a lot of those players that were clogging up the box as well.
And I think my point is more related to the last half hour or second half, not the whole game. You're right. He did make some runs in behind in the first half. And again, this was like when it's 0-0 and you're getting to the point where like you're the home team, you're the favorite, you got to go find a goal. And there was just no one to be in a position to be goal dangerous at all. So yeah, to me, that was what this game was crying out for. And once we finally get it, we get a goal immediately.
Yeah, I did not understand that Ruiz substitution. I'm not sure if you mentioned that already while I was disconnected, but that was an absolutely baffling move for me. Campana had to come on earlier.
Yeah, that's a defensive. That's saying to the team, we're okay with the 0-0 draw. Again, that was the third substitution window. So in any normal game, that's it. You don't get Campana at any point in this game. We got bailed out by the concussion for DC United, and that's why we got to bring in another player. But I don't understand. It was just like
we could have got on Campana and Ruiz together, right?
I know.
We just chose not to. Yeah,
and I think he made the right decision by bringing off Rojas because Rojas wasn't having a great game, and so Campana for Rojas I think was the right substitution. But it should have happened in the 75th minute, not in the 93rd minute. So that's my rant for today. I promise.
Oh wait, we haven't spoken about Tata Martino yet, so don't give up on your rants so soon.
Okay,
we might have another one in the box.
Let's talk about Tata Martino. To me, I thought the starting lineup was fine. I actually thought that bringing on Robert Taylor, moving Matías Rojas to the midfield was the right decision tactically. I liked it. I was happy to see it, but it didn't work. And I think that ultimately the only real gripe I have was bringing on Ruiz for Gressel and using your final substitution window instead of bringing on any player that's going to help your attack. We did see Rojas sort of sitting as a 10, and then Gressel and Busquets were sitting as dual 6s, and then eventually David Ruiz. So you can understand bringing on Ruiz for Gressel, get a little bit fresher legs, a little bit more defensive bite. You get that, but not bringing on an attacking player to try and put emphasis on scoring, I thought was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. Okay, let's look at the three criteria that we usually judge him by, right? So he picked the right team. I didn't have too many complaints about it. The tactics were fine. The setup was okay. Substitutions absolutely awful, especially at a time when we needed that win. I agree with you. The Robert Taylor substitution was good. Matías Rojas playing centrally was a little bit better. I thought we had a little bit more attacking threat to us once that substitution happened. And then he goes on and does in the 80th minute, he changes it up with, bringing Ruiz on. Why don't you bring Campana on at the same time?
Or
You've
Leo
got a
Alfonso.
substitution. Or Leo Alfonso, yeah.
Or something to be offensive, because, I liked what Tata did in the 57th minute by bringing in Robert Taylor and moving Matías Rojas to the midfield. It didn't work, though. Like, I think the idea and the thought process was good. You're trying to change the structure of the game in an attacking way to try and create opportunities and get the goal. It didn't work. And so you have to try something else, especially in a game like this where you're the home team, you're the favorite. You have to be going for the victory, right? And that substitution was just saying we're okay with a 0-0 draw. We'd rather draw than lose, and we'd rather draw than go for the win. Again, it was just a scared decision, and I already used my one rant for today.
He plays it too safe at times, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think this team has too much quality to just sit back and defend a 0-0 draw for the last 10-15 minutes. Like, you're at home, you have to go in for the win. You can't be making a substitution like Ruiz for Gresso and then just leave it there, because you've got one more substitution left. So when you can see clearly that your single striker is not working out, yeah, you could potentially take him off for Campana, but why don't you just put on Campana as well? Have that extra threat up top, because that's the only way you're going to try and get those defenders to work a little bit and give them something to think about. So for me, I don't think Tata had a great strategy there with whatever his idea was. And I'll be honest, I think if I see Julian Gresso another time on that team sheet for the next couple of games, I'm going to probably have a little bit of a fit and go on a little bit of a rant, because it's getting too much, man. He needs a break. The poor lad needs a break. And this is not to talk about him as a player. He just needs a break. Give him time off. Give him some rest.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was the first Montreal game where in the second half when we needed goals, he put on Borgelin, he put on Campana, and he put on Suarez all together. Three strikers. Two of them are really good in the air, big bodies. And it's just like, that's what you do when you need to get goals. And to feel like you didn't need goals in this game, I thought was just not the right way to look at it. Anything else you want to talk about this game before we get into awards? Maybe why these types of wins are so important for a team?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned at the start, we've become used to winning 4-3, 4-2, having exciting games, scoring a lot. We've scored 35 goals, which is 10 more than the next best in the MLS. It's absolutely phenomenal how much of a offensive impact this team has. But these defensive performances where you grind out a victory, get that last minute screamer in, and have a close game, these are important. They still, regardless of what the scoreline is, you still get 3 points. So it's important to grind out wins. We're not going to be perfect day in, day out. Sometimes the other team's formation tactics are going to be difficult to beat, as was the case with DC United. They set up to frustrate us, and they did for large parts of the game. But the fact that we were still able to sneak out a win is what championship teams do. This is what teams that eventually go on to win that Supporter Shield or win that MLS Cup, you're going to look back on these wins because they actually really show a lot of personality. So I'm glad that we had one of these, difficult wins, because we deserve to win this game.
Yeah, and I think we would have spent another 15 minutes talking about our defensive performance if it wasn't for the Freire injury, and talking about what it could mean for us moving forward, because it was, you're right. It was, again, if it wasn't for this Freire injury, that would have been the best part of this game, was watching our defense handle business and take care of everything. And yeah. Instead, we get to rant about Tata Martino's substitutions. Okay, let's get into awards. As always, we give out 6 awards on this show after every game: a Miami Man of the Match, a Heron that flew north, and then 2 individual awards each. Last game, I gave out the Man of the Match, which means this game, it is your turn. Tell me, Saur, who is the best player for Inter Miami in this game?
I know Leo Campana got the goal, had the most impact as soon as he came on, but for me, there's one clear man of the match, and that is Toto Avilés. He has been phenomenal, not just this game, in the last couple of games, over the last couple of weeks, actually. He's been playing so well. And for me, he had a brilliant game. He was disciplined, did not lose the ball as much as he normally does, was positionally sound, made sure that we were not left exposed at any point in behind, especially with a threat like Christian Benteke, parading around in our box, and just did the job. And the perfect example or metaphor for his performance was, I think, in the 70th minute, where he had this really good tackle on the edge of the sidelines, where he hit the ball out for hustled a little bit and hit the ball out for a throw in. So that perfectly summarized how well he performed. It was a hustle, it was a grind, and I loved his performance through and through. For me, Toto Avilés could have been anyone else in the back line as well, honestly, but I think he outshone the rest.
Yeah, you have to have an eye for, you have to like physical soccer to appreciate some of the performances we saw in that game. But I think this is a good shout. He was really good, and he was physical, and he just does all the things you love for a defender to do on defense, especially. I think he's turned a corner, man. He's been so good over the last 3 or 4 weeks, really. Even in that Monterrey series, he had a goal. He was very physical, but since then, he's taken a step. He's turned a corner, whatever euphemism you want to use. He's been so good. I think he's fulfilling the potential that we bought him for. I wasn't sure about giving him an award just because I was just going to say the same exact things we said on Wednesday, but he is becoming one of the better defenders in this league right now. And his partnership with Freire was becoming really something, probably the best partnership we've had in Inter Miami in a long, long time. And so, nothing but great things to say about this performance from Toto. And it's just a shame that we're not going to get that duo back there for the foreseeable future.
I will say this, it will be a good glimpse into what kind of player Avilés is when we see a new partner next to him. Was it because of Nico Freire that his game got elevated so much? Or was it because he's actually really getting better by himself? There's no negatives to that. Either or is actually really good because he's still playing at a really high level. But I'd be interested to see what his performance is like when he's next to someone like Kristoff for an extended period of time.
Yeah. And we'll see it. And I still think one day we're going to get that Ian Frey and Toto Avilés combo, and it's going to be really fun for the diehard Inter Miami fans because those two are exciting young players. Okay, our next award is the Heron that flew north. This is the award we give to the player that wasn't doing the right thing. And for me, I think this has to go to Matías Rojas. He didn't have it, man. He had it in all of the best ways in his first couple appearances for this team and on Wednesday night, and especially in that second half on Wednesday night. And then in this game, he just didn't have it. Turnovers, didn't have that lovely combination play that we saw earlier on. And he just didn't feel like he was fitting in the right ways. I had an award for him if I didn't give this out because I think we need a specialist to come in and help him figure out what exactly his role is and how he can best be used in this team. He feels like a player that is so talented that you build your team around him. And I think that's what happened to him when he was at his best with Racing Club in Argentina. And this team, though, with Messi and with Suarez, and you don't build around Matías Rojas. You have to figure out how to fit him in. And that's a process we're still going through, and he's still going through. And so I'm not blaming him. I don't think he's a bad player, but there's still some chemistry to be worked out. There's still some understanding of his role in this team.
I don't like you because you stole my best award. I gave him the "He's Not Gene Kelly" award because he was not singing in the rain. Um, and yeah, he didn't have a great game. It was a little bit painful to watch because it felt like he was again trying a little bit too hard. I don't think the left wing position is for him. He might be better in the midfield, but it's too early to compliment. It's too early to comment on what his role is going to be in this team. He's still finding his footing. This is what his fourth or fifth game with us. Yeah, he wasn't great, and he was still trying to figure out how to play a few things here and there. Had a few good instances with linking up with Messi and stuff, but overall it felt like he was struggling out there. And it's gonna get, it's gonna be like that in a few games. He's gonna have a little bit of a hard time trying to fit in properly. But I think the responsibility lies on Tata Martino and the coaching staff to figure out what his best position, what his best role is. Whether that's off the bench, I don't mind that. He can have a fabulous impact off the bench. Whether it's in the midfield, maybe. We've got so much midfield competition. So if that's where his position is, we're going to have to figure that out. Or if it's on the right wing or the left wing, we're going to have to really think about this because we already dropped the ball with someone like Gressel. And he's just playing day in, day out just because Tata Martino bought him. So I hope that's not the case with Matías Rojas and we can actually find a proper role for him on this team because we don't want him to struggle. He's got a fantastic potential and he's already shown what a spark he can be. So hopefully this was just a little blip in that great performance resume that he's had so far.
Yeah, I mentioned it a minute ago that you build a team like this around Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez and Busquets, right? And everyone else has to figure out how to make themselves fit. And for the really young players, it's easy because you just want to make an impact. And so you do whatever you're told, you make whatever run you want to make or you can make. It's easy to adapt your game when your game is unfinished and you're just raw. But when you're an established veteran, a guy that's 27, 28, 29, your game is mostly a finished product in terms of what you are as a player. And so it can be, I think, a little bit more difficult to figure out how to fit in to a system that's built around other players. And not that you can't do it, it's just more of an adapting process. And that's what we saw with Nico Freire, where he's gotten better and better as the season's gone on. We've seen Julian Gressel struggle to do that. And Matías Rojas has had some banger moments so far, but I think he's still figuring out exactly how to fit into this team. We saw the same thing from Cello. And so, yeah, I think that he's going to get there. It's just a matter of letting it work. Okay, what's your first award?
I'm going to go with the Professor X award.
The Professor X award. This goes to Sergio Busquets.
Perfect. Bang on. He's been quietly really, really good these last few games. He's back to his best levels. He's dictating the play from the middle. He's doing things that I think someone described him as being absolutely cerebral in the way he's playing right now. And all the question marks that I personally had about Sergio Busquets and his potential and how he fits into this team, whether he has it in him still or not, those are out the window. He's just shown that he's back to some of his best levels and just phenomenal in the way that he finds certain passes. And that pass to Leo Campana was a peach. Obviously, Campana had a bit of work to do, but yeah, I think Sergio Busquets is really, really building into this team as the best performer out there. And with Redondo back, it's gonna look good. Because I remember Redondo was sort of overcoming some of Sergio Busquets' problems when he was playing with them in that 4 games that he did. So now that both of them are, now that Busquets is back to his best levels, it would be really good to see him play next to Redondo.
To me, he was the man of the match. He was so good. I thought he was phenomenal. I thought on a night where a lot of players weren't really up to it, things weren't really coming off for them, I thought he was like world-class prime Busquets. It was really fun to watch. And like you said, he had some moments earlier in this year where he was turning the ball over and he was getting caught out in bad positions. And I do think that our defense being a little bit better over the last month, more structured, maybe we don't notice him being caught out of position a little bit more, but he's cleaned up the turnovers and it's allowed the beautiful parts of his game to really shine. I think he's been putting in more effort over the last couple, maybe the last month or so, but it's really been paying off in the last couple games. So to me, he was all over the field. He had incredible passes. He gets the assist, just as creative as always. And I think I know he's like a true 6 deep line playmaker type player, and that's how he identifies, and that's what he's been for a long, long time and at the highest levels. But he's so talented that I kind of want him, and we have so much depth in the midfield that I think he's the most fun chess piece to move around the board and see how you can adjust what you're doing to best beat the opposition in any given game. And so we talk about him moving up and back and forth up the pitch, but he's just so good and so versatile and has shown it defensively over the last couple of games. I just can't say enough good things, honestly. To me, he was the best player on the pitch for Inter Miami.
Yeah, I had a toss-up between Avilés and Busquets, but I wanted to make the most of my award. So there you go. All right, your turn.
You couldn't miss the Professor X award. I'm giving the like father, like son.
I've used that award before.
Have you?
Yeah, for Redondo, I remember. So you've stolen from me. But
my apologies.
I'm trying to think. Is that Jordi Alba?
It is not Jordi Alba, but I am curious on why you think it might be Jordi Alba.
I saw his name in front of me and I was like, oh, maybe it's him. I'm not sure, man. Who is it?
That's as good of a reason as any. It goes to Leo Campana because we mentioned in the preseason that Campana can use this opportunity to learn and become a better striker from Luis Suarez. But I don't know how much we've actually seen it play out because we haven't seen a ton of Campana. But after the game, the two of them had a hug, happy, smiley face. And I was just thinking, man, these two should be apprentice and master in this craft of scoring goals in the league. And we've seen some phenomenal goals from Luis Suarez this year. And this one from Campana was right up there with anything we've seen from Suarez. I wanted to come back to this question after the awards, but yeah, Campana deserves an award. He had a banger. He won the game for us. He deserves an award. And yeah, he's awesome, man. He's 5th now on the team in terms of goals per minute behind just Suarez, Messi, and then Rojas and Kramaski from a small sample size. But he's a good player that would score a lot of goals if he played more. And it's hard to say he should play more just because I don't know how it always fits, but he's a good player and I like watching him play soccer.
Completely agree with you. I don't think I can put it any better. I think I wish he gets more chances going forward because he's such a fantastic striker. It can sometimes go under the radar because he doesn't get to play that often. And obviously a player needs rhythm and game time to be able to actually affect a game. So hopefully Tata Martino gives him a lot more opportunities rather than just 5 minutes at the end of the game.
I don't know if he's ever going to get a real run of games this season just because Suarez doesn't feel like the kind of guy that's going to be out for any period of time. No alien abductions for him. So I wish we could find a way. And I do think Tata's been creative in getting the younger players runs of game, right? We just saw David Ruiz get a nice run. In the last couple of games, Kramaski's gotten a nice run. Noah Allen earlier in the season got a solid run. Sunderland got a few games. And so I feel like Tata's been better than I was expecting in terms of getting these guys opportunities to get not just 20 minutes off the bench, but a real run of 2 or 3 games in a row. And I am still waiting for that to happen for Leo Campana.
Right. I've got quite a few awards that I planned, but this is a player that we haven't. Yeah, I can if you want. But I think I'm going to give this award next. It's the Solar Eclipse Award.
Does this go to Nico Freire?
No. I had an award for Nico Freire as well, but no. We've already talked a little bit about Nico Freire. This is a player that we haven't spoken much about.
The solar eclipse is going to go to Marcelo Wiegand because Benteke is the star of DC United's offense, and Cello was just all up in his face, blinding him from goal.
That's actually a really good explanation. But this award is for Lionel Messi. And the reason for this award...
It's a great explanation. It's wrong.
It's a very good explanation.
It's a great explanation.
Yeah. Of course. It's almost the right answer, but it's not the right answer. Lionel Messi award. And there's a reason for that, right? Messi's sun has been shining the brightest in these last few games. And we've absolutely loved and enjoyed watching him play. And then obviously he was out for the last game. And then this game, he didn't have much of an impact. And I read a comment online which said Messi's sort of slumping or, not being sort of on the decline a little bit in terms of how much he's impacted. And I was like, nah, that's just wrong. So I wanted to use this award to address that. For me, the fact that he's had such a brilliant impact in this season already, 1 or 2 games just, he is human at the end of the day. He's not always going to be able to make the impact that he regularly has. And honestly, he's putting up numbers that are absolutely inhuman, that are godly. And if he has one off game, it stands out a little bit more than it normally would. So for me, we just need to make sure that we put things in perspective because he's had one off game. And honestly, it'll be important for us to not depend on Lionel Messi as much and maybe win games without being dependent on him because Copa's coming up and he's going to be away. So I'm just glad that we were able to win this game despite Messi not being at his best. And SofaScore agrees with me because they gave him a 6.7 rating, which was on the lower side of what the rating was for the rest of the team. So, just need to, put things in perspective a little bit.
I have 2 thoughts about that. First, he does this thing where he dribbles into players and then somehow just winds up on the other side of them with the ball. And it doesn't really make sense. I don't understand how it works so often for him, but it just does. And sometimes it just doesn't come off because, I don't know, defenders close their legs. I don't know why it works in the first place, but it wasn't really working in this game. Those little dribbles through players. That's my first comment. And when it does work, then he gets his own space and then he's ultra dangerous. And then my second thing, going back to my point about not having an arrowhead to our attack, I think if we did, Messi has an assist or 2 in this game if we had that the whole game, because I still think he got into some dangerous areas, but even when he gets there, he has no one to just sort of dump the ball off for an easy goal. So I think if Campana plays from halftime on, I think he gets an assist or 2, and I think this game looks fine from him. I didn't think he was bad. I thought he was fine.
Yeah.
He just didn't get the goal contributions.
Yeah, but an average performance from Lionel Messi is like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end, right? So
I suppose that's true.
All right. What's the last award?
My last award is the Big Dog Award.
Cello Wiegand or Nico Freire, one of the 2.
I'm curious why you would think it's one of those 2.
Because they had the big dog in them to be able to deal with the big dog. They dealt with Christian Benteke as though he was an annoying fly. And they were this massive bulldog who just absolutely took care of business how they were supposed to.
Yeah. It's 2 parts. It goes to the award goes to Nico Freire. If you ever are, walking through a neighborhood and you see a dog outside on a leash, like a big dog, that's his territory, man. That's his territory. And that's exactly what happened in this game. Nico Freire was like, this is my area. You have fun doing whatever you want to do, but just know if you come in here, this is my territory. And to double entendre, he has that big dog in him. Cello was phenomenal and he probably deserved an award, but this one goes to Nico Freire because he just owns that box, man, and it's a disaster to see him go. But he's so good. He's physical. He's big. He's strong. He's getting back. He's not getting beat in transition. He wasn't turning the ball over in this game like we've seen a couple times him become a little prone to do. And yeah, excellent performance from him, at least for the first 66 minutes. He was instrumental to shutting down this DC United attack.
Yeah, I had an award for him and Cello actually. So it's the back line, all of them can just be encompassed in one, right? They had a really, really good game. And Nico Freire, particularly, he's been really good these last few games, just like Toto Avilés. And he's been commanding his box a lot better than he usually was. We saw his aerial prowess come into play. This was something that we spoke about, and this was the game that it was on display. He wasn't the tallest compared to the opposition, but he just won the headers when he needed to. I'd love to see his aerial stats because.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because he's the big dog.
Of course. I'd love to see his aerial stats, and I'm looking at them now. Aerial duels, he had 7 duels and he won 5 of them. So that just goes to show what a great game he had. And not just the physicality of it, but his positioning was really well done. And it just all seemed to really fit together. Now, the bad side, the fact that he got injured and it doesn't look good at all, is a really, really big loss, especially when he was rounding off into a really good patch of form. This is the worst possible way and time that you can lose a player. So it's just, if this is how we remember the Avilés, Freire, Cello, and Alba combination, Negri combination, I hope it's not the last time that we see them, but I don't want to speculate too much. That'll be a conversation for the next time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a time when Inter Miami had a better defense than what we've seen over the last couple of games, and it's been. I really honestly can't. It's from very early on. So yeah. Any other players that deserve to be mentioned? Obviously, Cello also had a great game. Doesn't get an award, but gets one as an honorary mention. Jordi Alba, I thought was fine. Drake Calendar had a couple nice saves in that second half that were important. But yeah, I guess that those are the guys that I sort of highlighted as worth talking about.
I mean, Jordi Alba looked good coming back from injury. I don't think he lost a beat at all. He did what he usually does, took up really good positions, just didn't have a output towards the end. But yeah, I think he had a good game. Sergej Kristov, when he got on, he didn't put a step wrong as such. So good for him for, keeping that clean sheet and working through with the rest of the defense. And then, yeah, I think that's about it. Robert Taylor was good, but, didn't have the level of impact that we'd want from a substitute. David Ruiz, I thought, had a little bit of a... I didn't like that substitution particularly, so maybe I was being biased in viewing him and his ability. But yeah, overall, I think it was a good game from a lot of these players, just lacking a little bit towards the final third. But we always get these games from time to time. So,
yeah, I think Robert Taylor could have had an assist if other players were playing a little differently. But I want to ask you, how did you feel about Kramaski? Because I saw some people thought he didn't do tremendous, and I don't think the analytics thought he was tremendous. And yet I thought he looked lively in a way we haven't seen over the last couple of games. So I guess
I didn't think he was particularly amazing, like he can be, but I thought he was good. His play style, I think, depends a lot on how the players around him are playing as well. So when the midfield is not functioning the way it's supposed to, I thought he was maybe struggling a little bit, but he was better than he was in the last couple of games, because I thought you pointed it out that his fitness seemed to be lacking a little bit and he seemed to be struggling. But this game, he looked sharp. He got into a couple of good positions early on and made some chances. He had that really good opportunity to get a goal in the first half. But yeah, I thought he was okay. No complaints as such.
Okay, I do want to go back to this question from Skrilla that was, half an hour ago or so. Do you guys think that we can play with a 2-striker formation, with both Campana and Suarez on the field together? I don't think we've gotten that, other than maybe in sort of a desperate come from behind mode. And really that DC United game, the road game, and then the CF Montreal home game are the only 2 times I remember this season us actually deploying that. Do you think this works? Do you think this could work with the rest of the team the way it is? And if so, how?
The only issue I have with that is that then we don't have anyone coming off the bench to try and, if that's not working, how do you change things up? Maybe there are options, but I'd like to see it at least once. We did play Leo Campana and Luis Suarez when we were playing the 3-5-2 at least once in the last few games. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it can be a good
against the Red Bulls on the road. The Red Bulls, they
yeah.
both played.
Which
We
didn't
blacked
end
that
well
game
for
out.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it can work, but I don't think it's a permanent solution. Maybe when we need a little bit more options, when we're playing against teams that are so deep lying, like we did against DC, could be a potential option for us to have with a midfielder, Messi, Rojas, Sergio Busquets, and maybe Kremaski or Gressel.
I'll be honest. I don't think it works with Messi. I just don't think with Messi occupying the spaces that he occupies, you can build a structured team around that includes both Suarez and Campana. Just being honest, you can do it. You can do it for 15, 20 minutes at the end of the game, trying to get a goal, something like that. But I think that's not you're not going to build a great structure around that offensive setup. But Anton makes a great point. When Messi's gone, a 4-4-2 with Suarez and Campana up top, that feels like something real, especially if you get a 4-4-2 that has Gressel playing as a right midfielder and not centrally. And then, Robert Taylor, Matías Rojas on the left side, and then some athletes in the middle with an athlete in the middle with Busquets. That feels like something that could really work well. I absolutely hope we get that this summer when Messi's gone. And in fact, I think there's a chance Messi doesn't play next weekend just because of the travel and the turf and all that. And so I would love to see this if Messi doesn't go next weekend against Vancouver.
Yep. I think it's time the Tata experiments a bit.
Okay, so anything else about this game before I wrap it up with a fun anecdote before we leave?
Thank Lord we won 3 points because it was difficult.
Okay, guys, I have one bit of fun news. Inter Miami CF2 is getting ready to play in about 35 minutes, and on the bench and available for them is Ian Frey. So there's a chance that he makes his official return to professional soccer and healthy soccer in the next hour or so. So that's exciting. Hopefully they do a little bit better. They've been struggling lately. Other than that, guys, we'll be back probably on Tuesday for our midweek episode. So, I don't think we've ever done it on Tuesday. So catch that either live or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts after. And then other than that, we'll be back for the pregame show next Saturday and postgame and so on and so forth. That game is available on MLS Season Pass on Apple. If you go to the Inter Miami section, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom, and then you'll see the B team. But that's on MLS Season Pass. And yeah, we'll see you guys on Tuesday. Thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoyed it and enjoy your evening.